Hello, everyone, and welcome to the July 12th Council meeting of the Village of Lytton. I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone to turn off their video, mute their microphones, and to allow Council to begin the proceedings. Just to let you know, we're all being recorded and broadcast on the Village of Lytton YouTube channel. If anyone is looking for a video recording of this meeting or past meeting, you can go to the Village YouTube channel and watch it there. Thank you very much, Mayor O'Connor. You may call the meeting to order.
Thank you. So I call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. So I'd like to start this evening by acknowledging that I'm here this evening on the traditional unceded territory of the Tk'emlúps people, along with Mike Glaschuk here as Deputy Corporate Officer. Mike is here in this capacity in accordance with our council procedure bylaw. So we will now move on to adoption of the agenda. So can I please have a motion from council?
So move, Toss.
Thank you. Seconder?
Second, Lightfoot.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Adoption of minutes of the June 28th meeting. A motion, please.
I'll also move, McCann.
Thank you. Seconder? Michelle? And all those in favor? Oh, sorry, are there any errors or omissions? No, okay. All those in favor of the minutes as presented? Carried. We're going to move right on to item number 6, and I'm going to turn it back over to our CO Bannon.
Thank you very much, Mayor O'Connor. That's item 7, actually, on public comment on matters related to the agenda.
You're right. Yes, you're right.
No problem. Thank you. Members of the public are now invited to comment on matters related to the agenda. If you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. You can find that by clicking on reactions at the bottom of your screen and then by clicking raise hand. When it's your turn, I'll read your name and we'll ask you to unmute yourself. You get a pop-up on your screen asking you to unmute. You have 2 minutes to speak per speaker. Speakers must state their name, address, and agenda item number they're speaking to for each comment. If anyone would like to speak now, please use the raise hand function. Once again, we're calling on public comments, and if anyone would like to speak, please use the raise hand function. And calling the third and last time for public comments, if anyone would like to speak, please use the raise hand function. Mayor O'Connor, I don't see any hands raised at this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item number 8, staff reports. And we'll start with CAO Diane Mombercat regarding the Auto Plan Broker Authority report. So I'll turn it over to Diane.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. Good evening, everybody. The report is in the package. It's a fairly standard procedure. So what we're looking at here is because our auto plan broker is not located near the Village of Lytton, every time we need to make a change in a registration for a vehicle or a plate or anything like that, we have to courier documents back and forth because ICBC requires original signatures on things. So we can't scan, we can't digitally sign. We have to sign originals and then send them back and forth. So ICBC have developed a procedure that they allow their auto plan brokers to use, where they sign 2 standard documents on behalf of their clients. And so these documents are just nothing to transfer or sell or dispose of any assets, but just to register the plate, to request a registration and a license plate for a new vehicle. So for example, we recently purchased a mobile EOC trailer. It's a new addition to our fleet, so we need to have a new registration and a new plate for that. It took weeks to mail documents back and forth and then get the plate mailed, and because we can't accept couriers, we don't have an office location in Lytton where a courier can come. We have to use Canada Post. that it adds additional time, and just really to make the whole process more efficient. So I'm recommending that we provide this authorization to our broker for those times when we need that service.
Great, thank you. So can we put this recommended two-part motion on the floor? Who would like to read the motion?
I'll read the motion if you'd like.
Thank you.
I move that council authorize staff to provide authority to the Village of Lytton's auto plan broker to sign Insurance Corporation of British Columbia documents APV 250 and APV 9 on behalf of the village, and that council authorize the chief administrative officer to execute the required documents.
Thank you. A seconder.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. Are there any questions or comments? Being none, all those in favor of this motion?
Aye.
Carried. All right, we're on to item number 2, 2, public hearing report policy. Diane.
Thank you again. We've talked about this before. We're now in a position with some of our bylaw amendments where we need to hold public hearings, and the Village of Lytton didn't have a current public hearing process. So this policy is meant to guide council and staff in running that public hearing process and ensuring that everybody has an opportunity for input and is aware of what the different deadlines are for providing that input to council for those kinds of bylaw amendments. So I'll just leave it at that. And if anybody has any questions, I can answer them.
Great, thank you. Call for the motion to be put on the floor. Councillor Lightfoot.
I move that council adopt council policy 2023-02- public hearing process policy.
Seconder. Councillor Toss, thank you. And any questions or comments for Diane? Councillor Lightfoot. Sorry, Councillor McCann.
Oh, okay. I had one question, and I asked it earlier, and I'll just ask it in public. I was kind of intrigued that the policy says that there will be no PowerPoint presentations made. And so I was kind of curious why that would be a rule. And I was told that it's because it is for the efficiency of time. So understanding that, I still kind of wonder that maybe sometimes a picture is really helpful, and sometimes PowerPoints get the point across easier than me as Joe Citizen with my little story might be there. But nonetheless, I accept and acknowledge that it would probably be more efficient to not have that kind of time taken, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do believe it's intended to, guard against somebody coming with a 25-page, presentation and taking up, 45 minutes of time kind of thing. Your comment of somebody, showing a picture to try to, make a point. That's a very valid point that you're making.
Thank you. Councillor Toss.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. Yeah, I actually concur with, well, I don't know if Councillor McCann was making a point in the to concur that the presentations not be allowed, but if it's efficiency of time, I guess that's more relevant for a larger community when you'd have a lot of people speaking, but I'd love it if we had a problem with so many people involved that time was an issue. So if it's the wish of the rest of council, I'd certainly support allowing PowerPoints. It's a time constraint, and that 5 minutes for 10 minutes, or the 3 5-minute sessions or ability to talk would then take care of that. That was my, so that's one comment. The other was around refraining from clapping. And I've been to a few public hearings here in Delta, and there's a lot of involvement from the audience. And I never realized, I don't know if that's typical to have that in the bylaw for public hearings, but I can see why no heckling or negative comments, but clapping seems fair game. So I'm wondering what the rationale is there.
Excuse me. I think it's, and this is a council policy. So, it's your policy on how things are run. I think it's intended just to try to not demonstrate bias one way or the other for particular comments that are being made. So to try to keep the conversation as neutral as possible.
Thank you. And then, so it says for its proposed amendments in 3.0, it says village staff will introduce proposed amendments, but this is also, just to be clear, for introducing a new bylaw. Or just making amendments to existing bylaws.
Correct. It could be in the case of a new bylaw as well. You're correct.
Okay. So this would apply to a rezoning application for a public hearing. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any public hearing.
Yeah, right, okay.
Okay.
Yes.
No other comments or questions? All those in favor? And carried. Thank you, Diane, for both items. Your clear reports. It was very well explained when you write those out. Much appreciated when we're reading them. We're going to move on to item 8.2, recovery managers.
Mayor O'Connor, if I could just interrupt for one second. We're getting a bit of feedback, and I'm just going to remind the public, members of the public again, to mute themselves and turn off their camera. Thank you very much, Mayor O'Connor. You may proceed.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who's sitting here with me for our recovery managers report.
All right, thank you. We have filed a report. We have a PowerPoint presentation, no more than 25 slides, and I'll just keep talking. So, so you get your wish. Can we, Alba, you were
Just 1 second, Mike. I'm just getting it on here. Just 1 second. Thank you.
I didn't miss that.
No worries. No worries. Can everybody see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
This is a standard format. We were asked to do PowerPoint presentations on these now going forward. So this will be, we'll modify a little bit over time, but we try and keep it to the very specific subjects that we're working on and some of the main headlines that I can speak to. So if we go to the next slide. So just a reminder, we're working on a number of specific initiatives of which the emphasis and workload will shift over time. Big focus on site recovery, which is the site cleanup, remediation archaeology, which has been, the major push, as you can see, for the phase 1. We're now sliding into phase 2. Less emphasis in those areas. Now starting to focus on utilities and housing. Then in phase 3, we started to shift into sort of our more of the business and government services. So that's been our emphasis and sort of the staging of how we'll proceed. Next slide. So under that sort of cleanup, remediation, and archaeology, we had a backfill work plan prepared for a first test phase. We wanted to test with one zone and see how it would go. Well, backfill contract was awarded after a competitive process. We had 3 bids. LFN was one of the bidders and was a successful bidder on that. And we backfilling completed on, this is the number of lots, there's actually 8. And we're evaluating the work plan for the larger area. We had a few issues in doing those 8. We've discovered that sometimes the truck drivers were not following the instructions of where they were supposed to drive and told over the wrong properties. We had some scraping done that shouldn't have been done. The compacting, backfilling, we're trying to retain people's foundation areas where we backfilled. And we found we just can't. If we try and compress it around that, it starts to collapse. So we're actually going to have to backfill flat the whole area. And then afterwards, people who want basements are going to actually have to dig that out, but we cannot seem to make that physically happen. So we have to, we've got the Heritage Committee has an issue with some of the work we've done, and as well as the archaeological branch. We said this was a test, and that's what we're doing, and we'll reevaluate the work plan. I think we've discovered we need to have a little bit more upfront communication. We will set this up so it's more of a every day go over the work plans. We'll be marking the sites a little bit more detailed. Put clean earth here, not here, because we had earth dumped in the wrong spots and stuff like that. So we're going to be definitely more prescriptive than we thought. Next slide. As well as one of the actions we had was the Rebuild Multi-Faith Blessing event held on June 30th. I think the highest count I had there was 80. Does that sound about right? I counted about 80 at one time. And it was very moving. It was, it was a sad day and kind of pumped everybody up. And it was nice to see the parish hall, which luckily got turned on 2 days before then. So we had power and air conditioning because it was a little warm that day. But it seemed to be a very successful event, and we'll keep working with the multi-faith community on this. And in fact, I had a meeting yesterday with the Buddhist organization, and we're looking at a Buddhist and bikers event to see what we can come up with. so we may have something coming up there. Next slide. So the BC Hydro main service is completed. There was one little area that was missed. We caught that, and that's since been hooked up. Parish Hall, Parsonage, and Church are now hooked up and operating. So we're right now preparing sort of work plan for short-term repairs on the water and sewer. We've got to get it up and running so people who are pulling permits and are going to be building by the fall will have those sort of systems up and running. And the intention is to still work on a long-term strategy and work plan, because this is a temporary fix. We know we have to replace major parts of the systems, and it may be the point where if you're there anyway, you replace the system. But we're going to keep everything running while we're doing that. People will observe fencing being repositioned. The only reason we have fencing now is to protect excavations, will protect people from going into areas, not for any other purpose. So as we're filling areas, you'll see fencing starting to come down. Next slide. So one of the things we've done is we did a follow-up meeting with Pacific Can and BC Housing. We put the two groups together. And one of the challenges with the Pacific Can grant model is it's end loaded. You have to spend the money, and at the end of it, apply for your grant and then have to pay back. So we met with BC Housing and looking at, would they be willing to front the money up? And they are interested in fronting the money, but it would mean the village has to play a role. And we're having to look at, there are certain rules for municipalities advancing money through. So myself and Diane are looking at that and trying to figure, is there a vehicle to do that or not? But there was an interest in doing that. So we're trying to find it easier for people to get that funding. It's a great program. We encourage people to get it, but if there's a financial challenge to do it, we want to try and see a way to solve it. We encouraging people to get their permits in. Don't wait until there's a flurry of them. And we're continuing to meet with property owners to sort of work on sort of the backfill plans. The big issue we were hoping, as I said, to save excavations that are already there. We're going to have a challenge doing that. We're going to have to backfill and then re-dig specifically because we can't get the walls deep enough. We can't risk a machine tumbling in as we compress. So we tried to do it. It just was a challenge. So we got upcoming meeting in the City of Kamloops regarding some assistance on our works, and we'll be following up with them tomorrow. So we had some initial discussions with Pacific Can, and they are starting to develop their program for business commercial. They're in the early stages of it, but they've asked if we can work with them to help them develop it. So they'll be up here in the next, I believe the 24th and 26th. They will be in setting up meetings with owners, and at the same time we'll follow up. And then we'll follow up with them on the development of the commercial program to see what direction. But my understanding, it's in the early stages still.
Mhm.
And the next slide. So again, we're looking at the options for the temporary fire hall. I don't think we've got a resolution there yet, but we have the temporary village hall recovery office pretty well up and running. I understand everything's signed now, leases, and we're just waiting for the cable to come in there. But we've actually have the fridge and microwave, so we can actually feed ourselves over there too.
Oh, good.
We've also more computer hardware has arrived. We've given donations of 10 machines, computers from the province of BC. We've upgraded the hardware on it, and they're fully functioning now. And the applications are being prepared for funding from the federal government for our community facilities. And again, that's a reminder of who we are and how to get a hold of us and where we tend to hide out downstairs at the former mill site.
Right.
So that's what I have.
Okay, thank you. So do we have any questions or comments from council? Councillor McCann.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike, but being in Lytton and getting all excited one day that there's going to be backfilling and then back to nothing was really disappointing. And I'm not sure I heard you clearly, but I think I did. So I'm going to say what I think I heard you just say about that and ask you just to clarify if I have any misunderstandings, okay? So my understanding from what you just said is that you went ahead, found that the plan that you had wasn't really working because machines were going where they weren't supposed to go. It was too challenging to try and maintain depression for a basement or foundation. And so things had to change. And so now, and then there was something about archaeology and they weren't happy about how something happened. I kind of missed that part. But the point is that now you're regrouping and you're kind of trying to learn from that experience so that the next part can go ahead. So those 8 properties are actually done now. Like, is that correct? Am I understanding that correct? And now you're just waiting or working on a new program to correct any errors. And then, of course, my question is, when do you foresee being able to move ahead with the next phase once you've had a chance to sort out this?
Okay, so yes, that's essentially it. I mean, we had some vehicles and some dirt that dropped on some archaeological sites that it shouldn't have been dropped on there. And so we caught it as it was happening, and you saw the dump truck go, oh, we run over there, stop, don't put there. But at that point, it's too late. So Arc Ranch and KC are not happy about that. And so there also, we found there was a breakdown in communication between LFN, who's providing the soil, and AEW, who's monitoring it, and MatCom, who's dropping it. We need to have a better sort of coordination of that prior to starting each day. So we knew this was a bit of a test. We're trying to find out what was going to work and what was not going to work. And that's why we took one zone. Now we're going back for an application to do all the zones. We said, okay, we've tested it. We found what's working, what's not working. We want to go back into the rest of the village, actually, not doing just another small one. We want to do the whole thing. But it's going to take us probably about 2 to 3 weeks, is my guess, is to go through the steps to get all the plan reallocated, get our permissions or sign offs on the work plans. It's got to go through KHC, it's got to go through Arc Branch, it's got to go through Rails. That is our best guess. It's about a 2 to 3 week period, and then we're back on and we go. But we knew there was always going to be a gap. Once we start to find something, we haven't submitted the work plan for the rest of it. For the other areas, there still is not the ARC reports back. So we've been waiting on AEW. Their report was due about 3 weeks ago. We asked for a report. They said be ready in about 3 weeks. So it should be ready anytime now. So we're waiting on that one. That plays a little bit into the time frame, but we're in discussions with them. We also think we need to straighten out a little bit about how the roles and responsibilities work between KHC, LFN, tribal council, and ourselves. I think there's definitely some confusion in that process. That definitely came up. So we need to straighten that out a little bit. It's going to take us, we think, about 2 to 3 weeks. We need to take that time to do that, get it right. At the same time, then because we've got our contracts ready, we're ready to go. Once it goes and we apply for everything, we're applying for the rest of the village. There will be some spots we can't fill. There's a few odd properties that haven't been dealt with, but for the vast majority of them, that's the plan. So,
Thank you, that helps.
we will give a formal report on this, what happened and what the challenges were. Dawn's drafting it up tonight. We should have it, we will present that to CEO Monbriquette, and she will give you the more fleshed out details of it.
Great, thank you. Just before I go to you, Councillor Toss, just would like to ask if any guests there, just check your mute, please, and make sure that you're muted. Thank you. Councillor Toss.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. Sorry, Mike, I just didn't hear the answer there about all 8 properties. Are they then completely remediated, like ready for rebuild if the water and sewer were available?
I don't know if we've got full leveling of the sites yet, because we had a few areas where we had to stop. So some,
Sorry?
some of them have had their backfill completed. Of those 8, some of them do not have their backfill complete. We had to stop at a certain point because there was soil meant for some that got dumped on the wrong spot.
And one more point of clarification. Thank you, Mike. And this might be, I heard from a resident that the plan was to put topsoil on top of the what's going in now. Is that true?
Yes, we're right now it's basically gravel crush we put on. We put it on about 12 to 18-inch levels. We machine compact each level, but we're into deep areas. We're filling up fairly extensive areas. That's where we also run steamroll over to get it really down. We're going to a certain level. We'll then have a geotech review it, and then we put topsoil over top of that. Intention is also to gather more than topsoil. We're going to recognize a lot of people had gardens and stuff. We're not going to be able to essentially put the gardens back, but we're going to be able to collect garden type soil so people will be able to start their gardens.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? So what we'll do then is have somebody make the motion to receive this report for information.
I'll do that. We'd like to move that council receive the recovery/rebuild report dated July 12th, 2023.
Thank you. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lightfoot. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 9, bylaws. And we're going to start with 9.1, zoning amendment bylaw 736. And Beartab, did you have anything? Yes, there you are.
Here I am. Now, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I just wanted to bring to your attention, the last time that we met, we had brought forward just the bylaw to amend the front lot line. There was a lot of discussion in the last meeting, and we believe in this bylaw or this particular zoning report that we captured all the things. So just to reiterate, the things that we captured are: 1, we deleted the minimum floor area. We deleted the minimum width of a principal building. We're amending, or we're seeking, or we're asking you to amend, sorry, let's get the right wording here, the front lot line as discussed initially from 6 meters down to 3 meters. And we amended the maximum site coverage from 35% to 50%. So those are the things that are in this bylaw, and that's all I have as a point to speak about.
Thank you. So we have a 2-part motion here. So who would like to read the recommended motion? Councillor Lightfoot.
Actually, I was hoping I could ask a question, if that. is proper.
Sure.
So I'm just wondering, so if we pass this bylaw, people are still able
Sorry,
to,
Mayor O'Connor. I'm sorry, Councillor Lightfoot. We have to move the,
Motion on the
put the
floor.
motion on the floor first. Sorry, then discuss. Thank you very much.
Councillor Lightfoot, would you like to do that?
I'll make the motion.
Would you like to read it?
Yes. The council gives zoning amendment bylaw number 736, 2023, second reading as amended, and that a public hearing be scheduled.
Seconder.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor McCann. Now, does anyone have any comments? Councillor Lightfoot.
I just wanted to clarify that even if we move this bylaw ahead and it's accepted, anyone that wants to build outside of that bylaw can still ask for a variance. Is that correct? Yes? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Toss?
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. Two quick comments. And maybe just for clarification, Birta, I know you've explained this to us before, but maybe for the public, the question or the minimum lot area of 464.4 meters squared, or approximately 5,000 square feet, is not to say that a resident cannot build on a smaller lot. That is more for rezoning purposes. Can you clarify that for us again? And along with that, the minimum lot frontage.
Certainly. Generally, those
Thank you.
two items, your worship, or Mayor, are subdivision regulations. So the minimum lot size is, if I were to be subdividing a property, I would have to meet both the frontage and the minimum lot size, and also the depth. But those two are those function. If I have a property that is existing, it's always been existing, it's narrower, smaller, whatever, it only means that I have a smaller property. It does not mean that I can't, the regulations as a zone are applicable to my property.
Thank you. Councillor Lightfoot.
And to follow through with Councillor Toss's question, if I had a big lot and I wanted to divide it, I could still do that through a variance request? No?
Through to you, Mayor O'Connor. No, we cannot do subdivision through a variance request. Subdivision is a different process. In fact, I believe at this point, our subdivision process, if there is one, would be through the CAO. But that is something that we as planning have not yet established. And I'd have to be clear, and perhaps Corey can chime in here. It's either the CAO or the Ministry of Transportation that probably would be doing any subdivisions or would be approving any subdivisions within the village of Lytton because of the size of the village of Lytton. Corey, do you concur?
Yes. We need to establish who the subdivision approving officer is, who has been appointed, and that's one matter we haven't explored. But I believe if we haven't appointed someone within the village, that we would go back to the Ministry of Transportation.
Thank you. Councillor McCann.
There was one thing on this zoning bylaw that it states that there is only allowed one primary dwelling per property. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about increasing density. And I'm wondering, like tonight, I don't want to go there, but I'm wondering if in the future, the council decides perhaps through official community plan or something like that, that perhaps they want to change that. It is something that is still possible to change that to say 2 principal buildings or something. You could change that number later on.
Again, Mayor, through you, the OCP has a lot of powers when and if you do an OCP. At that time, if you want to change the zoning of the entire village, you could. So there's a lot of things that come in at that time. And we're also all very cognizant of the homes for people that's coming with the province, and that there might be some changes that are coming down that would facilitate that without us actually having to do anything. And we're all just sort of waiting to see what happens.
Okay, that was part of my question. That was the provincial government going to tell us what we could do, or were we going to say what we wanted to do? Okay, thanks.
Great, thank you. Councillor Toss?
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. Just a side note, if in the actual bylaw, once it passes, if we can have what the document that's available to the public also lists the square footage alongside the meter squared. For those of us that it can save us the step of looking it up. Thanks.
We can make that adjustment if you wish, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Lightfoot?
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. And I'm not sure who can clarify this for me, but we're taking it to a public hearing. If by chance at a public hearing, we hear that people want the minimum lot size to be less, then that would be incumbent upon us to reconsider and perhaps make modifications if we hear valid reasons and reasonable grounds to make a change. Is that correct?
I'll let Corey speak to that because it's more legislative.
Okay, thank you. Absolutely, you'd have a couple of options available to you. You could decide that you were going to reconsider that bylaw, or you could direct staff to bring a second separate bylaw forward, which was probably the tidier way to do things. So you could have a fulsome discussion about that second topic, if you will. So because we're trying to chunk things down into smaller bite-sized pieces, I would encourage you to think of, yeah, everything's a process, and we might not have one bylaw that encompasses every change. We might take 2 or 3 bylaws before we get to the sweet spot, if you like. But yes, there's options of ways you could do, and we could discuss it at that time.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. And seeing no other hands up for comments or questions, all those in favor of this motion? Carried. So now we move on to item 9.2, Board of Variance bylaw, and Berta, I'm turning it back over to you as well. And I believe you may have a PowerPoint to share.
I do. Let's just see what I've got here. Oh, this is. Can everyone confirm that you've only got the PowerPoint on your screen, or do you have my notes as well?
You have your notes.
I picked the wrong one. Okay. My apologies. I'm going to try this one. What do you have this time?
That's all we got. Just the PowerPoint.
Just the PowerPoint, no my notes? Okay, excellent. Now let's move everybody out of my picture, please. Here we go. Okay. So good evening, Council. We're here tonight to provide you with the last big piece of new legislation that we've got on our docket to provide for you. Again, it's one of the tools that it's required by the Local Government Act, and it's something that we have to have in our planning toolbox to be compliant from a planning perspective. The Board of Variance bylaw is required by Section 536, where a council has adopted a zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw 484 was adopted in 1998. There was a Board of Variance bylaw at that time, but as per the council report, it was not located. So tonight, what we have before you is a Board of Variance bylaw and a fact sheet for some clarification. So what is the Board of Variance? The Board of Variance is a quasi-judicial board working independently from the local government. So they work independently on decisions that you're not involved in. Their role is to consider appeals on the interpretation of an application of regulations. Their ability is to consider minor variances. So they wouldn't be looking at rezonings. They're not looking at anything that it's just a minor variance. That's why the name variance is in the board. Why is it required? Again, because of the LGA. When is it required, or when would they actually look at an application? Is that if there was undue hardship. And we went into a little bit of detail in the report on what undue hardship is. Generally, it is a physical thing that is through no fault of the owner or the village. Like a development permit, the Board of Variance cannot vary use or density, and the fact sheet does identify some of the differences. One of the things that I did want to go into here is just, it is common for local government to consider site-specific circumstances through which the DVP process is used, and there's very little reliance on the Board of Variance. Given the size of Lytton, it would be my professional suggestion not to really rely on the Board of Variance, because with the delegated authorities that we've received from the provincial government and we've already built in through your procedures development approval bylaw, there is a lot that you as council can decide, and really a Board of Variance is often not needed. But the Board of Variance bylaw is there to reestablish the Board of Variance, to set out the procedures for the Board of Variance, outline the manner in which appeals are brought to them, and identify how notices are given to them. There is one item that I brought up, and I do want to give a little bit of detail here. It is noted on the fact sheet that the Board of Variance can consider non-conforming buildings. And of course, we're in a situation where there were many, many non-conforming buildings in Lytton, just because of the history of the area. But I wanted to just go back to one of the regulations and why we can't use this, or why we can't use it for Lytton, is a non-conforming building is defined in terms of their, sorry, I've just lost my train of thought here. Unfortunately, the buildings to be rebuilt in this area are damaged more than 75%. So we always call it the 75% rule. I've pulled the piece out of the LGA on the screen here for you. And unfortunately, that's the reason why in Lytton, we can't just rebuild the buildings, and we do need to go for variances for a lot of things, because the Local Government Act says if it's more than 75% damage, we can't go back to what it was. Mm-hmm. It is understood that council will consider all the variances requested at the rebuild stage. And given that, I really think that the Board of Variance is more just a formality for us at this point. And that's also one of the reasons why we've left it towards the end of our work in terms of some of this governance model for your consideration. That's it for my presentation, and I'm open for any comments.
Thank you, Beata. So let's start by putting this recommended motion on the floor. Who would like to make that motion? Thank you, Councillor Lightfoot.
I move that council give the Board of Variance bylaw number 738, 2023, first, second, and third reading, and that council receive the Board of Variance fact sheet dated July 12th, 2023 for information.
Thank you. A seconder?
I'll second, McCann.
Thank you. And now, are there any questions or comments for Beata? No, I don't see any. And Beata, I just want to say as well, reading your report, I found it very easy to read and explained very well, and I really appreciate that. Thank you for that. Okay, so we are going to move on to correspondence.
Oh,
Excuse me, Mayor.
haven't voted yet.
Sorry, all those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry about that. Okay, now we can move on to item number 10, correspondence, and it looks like we had one item come in from our MLA Jackie Taggart, some correspondence, and who would like to read this recommended motion?
Oh, I'll read that.
Thank you, Councillor McCann.
I will move that the correspondence item 10.1.1 on the July 12th, 2023 regular council agenda be received for information.
Thank you. And seconder? Councillor Michelle, all those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Good. Okay, we are going to move on to the verbal reports. And somewhere I have my verbal report. Okay, so I really don't have a lot to report since the last council meeting. It feels like it was just yesterday. The media continued making requests for interviews over the last 2 weeks. And interestingly, this past week, I've been contacted by 3 different groups who are making documentaries. 2 of them international, one a TV company from Germany, and another from Australia. So interesting. They are looking at fires in Canada as a whole, or in British Columbia as a whole, or disasters, I should say. Every one of those, though, are very interested in our experience, our disaster, the resiliency of our community. That's a lot of questions they've asked, preparedness, and what they can learn from us is really what they want to be sharing in their documentary. For me, there were 2 main dates over the past 2 weeks. Of course, the 2-year anniversary date that Mike mentioned. I did make a statement, and it can be found on the village website. And I attended the Blessing Rebuild event that Mike shared. And it was just so nice that day to be with the community, in the community, you know, at that gathering. And of course, so nice to be in the parish hall. And the second date was 1 week ago when we saw that full day of backfilling work, that stream of dump trucks just coming into the village and leaving empty. And I'm looking forward to when we see that again happening, which hopefully is in the next couple of weeks, or 2 or 3, we'll see. Yeah, that's about all I have. I just want to remind people about the community meeting that's next Thursday, July 20th at 6:30. Please be sure to attend. And we're going to move on then to, I'm just going to go order up on my screen. So I'm going to go Councillor Lightfoot.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
I really don't have a lot to add to what you said. I went to the blessing ceremony on June the 30th. And as you said, it was inspiring, and it was just familiar and heartwarming to be in the parish hall with people talking, and it reminded me of what we're all longing for. I have to say, over the last week or so, with the smell of smoke, and then the last 2 days with the intense winds, it's triggered a lot of anxiety in the citizenry. And personally, to such an extent that I went through my go bag and got it up to date. Coming back from Kamloops today, it was really smoky, and we're only in the middle of July, so I do have some concerns. I think one of our council members made the comment that perhaps as we backfill, we can cover up some of that fuel that has grown 3 feet tall in the last little while. But on ending on a positive note, I have to say, when I drove out of town and back in today, I was really pleased to see the entrance sign up at the highway, freshly mowed and looking tidy. And I think we're portraying that we care, that our community cares. And it was just really nice to see that done. And thanks to staff. And I know there's a ton of work, but sometimes those small little things have such an impact visually on people that it gives us more hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I too attended the event on June 30th and was quite moved, as others were. And I also went with the mayor to the Two Rivers Remix evening performances, and we all danced to Indian Car at least twice. And it was quite fun to have a different version of Indian Car to dance to. So we had a really nice time. That was a wonderful way to end that day. It was just a really good day all the way around for all those involved. That was the only meeting or event that I have attended since our last meeting. I was excited and then disappointed about the backfill progress. So I'm getting used to being disappointed and still keeping positive and moving forward. I like to continue, I'm continuing to keep in touch with residents as I can, and appreciate the complexity and challenges being faced by our staff daily. I'd like to say thank you for all your dedication to Lytton's rebuild, because I know there's a lot more going on there than any of us really can see. But we sure do appreciate the fact that we have a group of people that are putting themselves out for us and for the people of Lytton, and that is much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you,
That's all.
Councillor Michelle.
So aside from from the 30th, I didn't have anything to attend, and I don't have very much to report this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Toss.
Thank you, Mayor O'Connor. I'm with Councillor Michelle. I don't have much to report. I have been speaking with residents, and I want to say thank you to the residents that take the time to write the village and provide feedback and talking to council. And echoing what Councillor McCann said too, thank you to all the staff again. Personally, I'm now on a leave of absence from my job, so I'll be able to put more time into the village, and I'm looking forward to having access to our properties to potentially have some sort of a temporary RV or something. And I think that's something council will be working through in the next few meetings as to what exactly that'll look like. But I'm really excited about being in Lytton again and having the time to really devote to the rebuild. Thank you.
Thank you. So wherever I put my agenda, there we go. That brings us then to what? To moving into the closed meeting. So we need a motion to move into closed meeting. So who would like to? Councillor McCann, sorry.
I just looked at how much we have to read. Oh my goodness.
Oh.
Okay. I'll take this on.
Oh, sure.
I will move the council close the meeting to the public to discuss matters related to the community charter sections 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual. Do I have to read the whole thing? Or can I just say which item it is?
You can just say which item they are, Councilor McCann. Thank you.
Thank you, Alba. Okay, so 90.1A, 90.1C, 90.1I, 90.1J, 90.1K, and 90.1M. There you go. That's my motion.
And a seconder, please. Councillor Lightfoot. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. So thank you, everyone. That concludes the open section of our meeting, and we'll now be moving into closed meeting. So I'll turn it back over to Lucille Van.
Thank you very much, Mayor O'Connor. That concludes the public portion of the meeting for this evening. We ask the public and staff, please remove yourselves from the meeting as we go into the closed session. Thank you very much for attending today's meeting.